There are moments in life that carve themselves into your memory, not with a sudden violent impact, but with a slow, insidious burn. Moments that, in retrospect, you realize were the precise turning points, the forks in the road where everything irrevocably shifted. I remember the crisp mountain air, the scent of pine and damp earth, the crackle of the campfire, and the easy laughter of my family. It was supposed to be a retreat, a chance to reconnect, to shed the weight of the city and simply be. But beneath the veneer of warmth and familiarity, a silent storm was brewing, waiting for the perfect moment to unleash its fury. And when it did, it wasn't a roar but a whisper, a request so audacious, so profoundly unsettling, that it fractured everything I thought I knew about loyalty, family, and the dark corners of the human heart. If you're ready to unravel a secret that still casts a long shadow over every family gathering, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. You won't want to miss a single chapter of this gripping tale. The old cabin stood nestled deep within the Adirondack Mountains, a rustic sentinel against the encroaching wilderness. Its weathered timber walls, stained dark by decades of sun and rain, seemed to absorb the quiet solitude of the forest. This was our family's annual pilgrimage, a tradition stretching back to my grandfather's time. Every autumn, as the leaves turned fiery shades of crimson and gold, we'd pack up our cars and make the 5-hour drive from the city, leaving behind the relentless hum of urban life for the tranquil embrace of nature. I was Jasper, 24 years old, a recent graduate trying to navigate the choppy waters of a fledgling career in graphic design. My life felt, for the most part, predictable, stable. My parents, Arthur and Beatrice, were the anchors of our small, tight-knit family. Arthur, my father, was a man of quiet strength, a history professor with a love for classic literature and long hikes. Beatrice, my mother, was the family's vibrant heart, a retired teacher whose warmth could thaw even the coldest winter day. This year, the usual contingent was present. My parents, my Uncle Gareth, Aunt Vivian, and their daughter, my cousin Ilara. Gareth, my father's younger brother, was a boisterous, jovial man, a successful real estate agent whose booming laugh often filled the cabin. Vivian, his wife, was elegant and reserved, a talented artist who found solace in sketching the surrounding landscapes. And then there was Ilara, my cousin. She was 23, a year younger than me, with a striking cascade of dark, wavy hair that framed a face often alight with a mischievous smile. Her eyes, a deep, intelligent hazel, held a spark of restless energy. We had grown up together, sharing scraped knees, whispered secrets, and the awkwardness of adolescence. As adults, our relationship had settled into a comfortable, easy camaraderie, a bond forged by shared history and unspoken understanding, or so I thought. The drive up had been uneventful, a pleasant blur of changing scenery and classic rock on the radio. We arrived in the late afternoon, the air already carrying the crisp bite of early autumn. The cabin, with its familiar scent of wood smoke and old books, welcomed us like an old friend. We spent the first evening in a flurry of unpacking, assigning rooms, and the ritualistic lighting of the massive stone fireplace in the living room. The first few days of the trip unfolded in a comforting rhythm. Mornings were for long, invigorating hikes through the rustling woods, the ground carpeted with fallen leaves. Afternoons were spent reading by the fire, playing board games, or simply sitting on the porch, watching the sunlight dapple through the trees. Evenings were a symphony of shared meals, hearty stews and roasted vegetables, followed by endless rounds of storytelling and laughter, fueled by mugs of hot cider and the occasional glass of wine. Ilara and I often found ourselves gravitating towards each other. We'd take the longer, more challenging trails, pushing each other to climb higher, to see the hidden waterfalls. We'd share headphones, listening to music as we watched the sunset paint the sky in fiery hues from the cabin's porch. There was an easy intimacy between us, the kind that only years of shared history can forge. We talked about our lives, our aspirations, our frustrations. She was pursuing a career in environmental law, a path she was fiercely passionate about, but also one that came with its own set of pressures. "Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning, Jas," she confessed one afternoon as we sat on a fallen log overlooking a serene lake, the water a mirror reflecting the cloudless sky. The weight of it all, the expectations, the sheer scale of the problems I want to fix. I nodded, understanding. "I get it, it's a lot, but you're good at what you do, Ilara. You're smart, you're driven, you'll make a difference." She smiled, a genuine, grateful smile. "Thanks, Jas. You always know what to say. If you're enjoying the unfolding of this family drama, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us create more compelling stories. That evening, the air grew colder than usual, hinting at the first frost of the season. A thick, inky darkness descended upon the mountains, broken only by the cabin's warm glow and the distant hoot of an owl. We gathered around the fireplace, the flames casting dancing shadows on the walls, creating an atmosphere of cozy intimacy. Arthur was recounting a humorous anecdote from his college days, his voice rumbling with laughter. Beatrice was knitting, her needles clicking softly. Gareth and Vivian were engaged in a quiet conversation, their heads close together. Ilara and I were sprawled on the rug, a chessboard between us, though neither of us was paying much attention to the game. We were just enjoying the warmth, the company, the sense of belonging. "Anyone want more hot cider?" Beatrice asked, rising from her armchair. "I'll help, Mom," Ilara offered, getting up. As they went to the kitchen, a comfortable silence settled over the living room, punctuated by the crackle of the fire. Arthur finished his story, and Gareth chimed in with a tale of his own about a particularly difficult real estate deal. A few minutes later, Ilara returned with a tray of steaming mugs, followed by Beatrice. She handed me a mug, her fingers brushing mine, a familiar, innocent contact. She then settled back onto the rug beside me, pulling a thick blanket around her shoulders. The conversation drifted, as it often did on these trips, to family history, to old memories, to the passage of time. It was a comforting ritual, a way of reaffirming our shared roots. Then, the mood shifted. Subtly at first, almost imperceptibly, Gareth, usually so boisterous, grew quiet. Vivian, who had been sketching in her notebook, closed it with a soft snap. Arthur's laughter faded. Beatrice's knitting needles stilled. A heavy silence descended, broken only by the fire. I looked around, sensing the change. "Everything all right?" I asked, my voice sounding unnaturally loud in the sudden quiet. Gareth cleared his throat, a nervous sound. He glanced at Vivian, then at Arthur and Beatrice. There was a silent communication passing between the adults, a tension I couldn't quite grasp. "There's something we need to discuss," Gareth finally said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. He looked at Ilara, then at me. "Something important." My stomach tightened. This wasn't about a broken pipe or a forgotten grocery item. This felt heavier. Ilara, who had been quiet since returning from the kitchen, now spoke. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, but it cut through the silence with a chilling clarity. "It's about me," she said, her eyes fixed on the flickering flames. "And something I need." My parents exchanged a worried glance. Arthur leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "What is it, sweetie? You know you can tell us anything." Ilara took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling visibly. She looked up, her hazel eyes meeting mine for a fleeting moment, then sweeping across the faces of our parents. Her gaze lingered on Vivian, her mother, who looked pale and drawn. I need a kidney," Ilara stated, her voice barely above a whisper, but each word landed with the force of a physical blow. The air froze. The crackle of the fire seemed to intensify, becoming the only sound in the room. My mind reeled. A kidney? What was she talking about? I knew Ilara had some health issues, a chronic condition that required regular medication, but I had never heard anything about a kidney problem. Beatrice gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Arthur's face went ashen. Gareth closed his eyes, a look of profound pain etched on his features. Vivian began to weep silently, tears streaming down her face. "Ilara, what are you saying?" Arthur asked, his voice strained, filled with disbelief. "My kidneys are failing," she explained, her voice gaining a fragile strength. "It's a complication of my autoimmune disease. The doctors say I need a transplant. Soon." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. A transplant. My vibrant, energetic cousin, who had just been laughing with me, needed a life-saving organ. The shock was immense, a cold wave washing over me. "Why didn't you tell us?" Beatrice cried, her voice trembling. "Why didn't we know?" "We've known for a few months," Gareth interjected, his voice hoarse. "We wanted to explore all options first. We didn't want to worry everyone unnecessarily." He looked at Arthur. "We've been doing tests, looking for a match." "And?" Arthur asked, his voice tight with apprehension. Gareth sighed, a sound of utter defeat. "Vivian isn't a match, neither am I. We've tested other relatives, distant cousins, but no luck. The waiting list for a deceased donor is..." Long. And Ilara doesn't have that kind of time. The reality of the situation crashed down on me with brutal force. Ilara was dying. Slowly, silently, while we had been hiking and laughing, oblivious. Ilara looked at me again, her eyes filled with a desperate plea. "Jasper," she began, her voice barely audible. "You're O positive, right?" My blood ran cold. O positive. The universal donor. I had given blood a few times in college. I remembered the nurse telling me my blood type. "Yes," I managed, my throat suddenly dry. "I am." A flicker of hope, raw and desperate, ignited in Ilara's eyes. She turned to her parents, then back to me. "We need to find a living donor," Gareth said, his voice gaining a desperate edge. "Someone who is a match, who is willing to donate." Vivian, through her tears, looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Jasper, please, you're young, you're healthy. You're her cousin, your family." The weight of their gazes, the unspoken expectation, was crushing. I felt a sudden, overwhelming pressure. My mind raced, a whirlwind of fear, confusion, and a terrifying sense of responsibility. Donate a kidney? To Ilara? Of course I would. She was my cousin, my friend. But the thought of surgery, of the risks, of the long recovery, it was terrifying. "We wouldn't ask if there were any other options, Jasper," Arthur said, his voice gentle but firm. "We've explored everything. This is our last hope." Beatrice, her eyes red-rimmed, reached out and took my hand, squeezing it tightly. "She's your cousin, Jasper. She's family. We have to do everything we can." I looked at Ilara. Her face was pale, her lips trembling. She was looking at me with an intensity that pierced through my shock and fear. It was a look that said, "My life is in your hands." I understand," I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. I'll get tested." "Of course." A collective sigh of relief swept through the room. Vivian let out a choked sob of gratitude. Gareth nodded, his eyes shining with unshed tears. Ilara offered a weak, grateful smile, a flicker of hope returning to her eyes, but the conversation wasn't over. Not yet. Ilara took another deep breath, her gaze still fixed on me, but now with a new, unsettling intensity. The firelight flickered across her face, casting her features in a strange, almost ethereal glow. "Thank you, Jasper," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Thank you. But there's something else." My stomach clenched again. Something else. What could possibly be worse than this? She hesitated, glancing at her parents, then at mine. The adults exchanged another series of worried glances, a silent, tense communication. It was clear they knew what was coming. "The doctors said, if we find a match," Ilara continued, her voice dropping even lower, "they want to do the transplant as soon as possible, but my insurance won't cover all the post-operative care. And the medication. It's incredibly expensive. For life." My mind raced. Medical bills. The American healthcare system was a labyrinth of astronomical costs. I knew this. But what did this have to do with me? "We've been trying to figure out how to cover it," Gareth said, his voice strained. "We've exhausted our savings. We've looked into loans, second mortgages, but it's not enough. Not for the long term." Vivian nodded, her face etched with despair. "The costs are astronomical, Jasper. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years. We don't have it." A cold dread began to creep up my spine. I looked at Ilara, then at my parents. Arthur and Beatrice looked uncomfortable, their gazes shifting. "So," Ilara said, her voice barely a whisper, but each word was a hammer blow. "We were hoping, since you're the one who's going to be donating, that you would also help us with the costs." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. My breath hitched. Help with the costs? What did that even mean? A contribution? A loan? Or something far more insidious? "What do you mean, help with the costs?" I asked, my voice tight, a sudden chilling suspicion forming in my mind. Ilara looked at me, her hazel eyes wide and pleading, but also with a strange, almost calculating glint. "We were hoping that you would sell your new car, Jasper, and use the money to help us with my medical expenses." The world tilted. The fire roared in my ears. Sell my car, my new car, the one I had worked so hard for, the symbol of my independence, my achievement, to pay for her medical bills. I stared at her, speechless. The audacity of the request, the sheer unmitigated nerve, was breathtaking. It wasn't just about donating an organ anymore. It was about sacrificing my hard-won independence, my financial stability, for her. My parents and my aunt and uncle were silent, their faces a mixture of shame, desperation, and unspoken agreement. They had discussed this. They had agreed to this. They were all in on it. "You want me to sell my car?" I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "To pay for your medical bills." Ilara nodded slowly, her eyes still fixed on mine, a silent plea mixed with a terrifying expectation. "It's just a car, Jasper. My life is at stake." The words were a dagger to my heart. A car, just a car. To her, it was a disposable asset. To me, it was everything. It was my future, my freedom. I looked at my parents, my eyes pleading for them to intervene, to tell her how outrageous this was. But Arthur looked away, his jaw tight. Beatrice squeezed my hand, her eyes filled with a desperate, silent plea for me to agree. "We know it's a lot to ask, son," Arthur finally said, his voice strained. "But it's Ilara's life. What's a car compared to that? What's a car compared to that?" The question echoed in my mind, a cruel, impossible dilemma. My cousin's life or my own future, my loyalty or my independence. I felt a cold, hard knot form in my stomach. The warmth of the fire, the cozy intimacy of the cabin had vanished, replaced by a chilling sense of betrayal. This wasn't a family trip anymore. This was a silent test, a profound moral quandary, and I was trapped in its unforgiving embrace. If you're as stunned as I am by this request, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. What will Jasper do? You won't want to miss the next part of this incredible story. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, like the thick mountain fog that sometimes rolled in, obscuring everything. "It's just a car, Jasper. My life is at stake." Ilara's voice, soft yet firm, echoed in the sudden, profound silence of the cabin. My new car, the symbol of my hard work and burgeoning independence, suddenly felt like a lead weight, dragging me down into an impossible moral abyss. I looked from Ilara's pleading yet strangely resolute face to my parents. Arthur, usually so steadfast, couldn't meet my gaze, his eyes fixed on the flickering flames of the fireplace. Beatrice, my mother, still held my hand, her grip tight, her eyes brimming with tears, silently begging me to agree. Gareth and Vivian, Ilara's parents, looked utterly defeated, their faces etched with a desperate hope that rested entirely on my shoulders. "What's a car compared to that?" Arthur's earlier words, meant to sway me, now felt like a betrayal. They had discussed this. They had agreed to this. My own family, the people I trusted most, were asking me to sacrifice not just an organ, but my financial future, my sense of self-reliance, for a cause that, while noble, felt like an unfair burden. A cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. The warmth of the fire, the cozy intimacy of the cabin had vanished, replaced by a chilling sense of isolation. This wasn't a family trip anymore. This was a profound moral quandary, and I was trapped in its unforgiving embrace. My mind raced, a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Fear, certainly. Fear of the surgery, fear of the financial implications, fear of the unknown. But also anger. A simmering, righteous anger at the audacity of the request, at the unspoken pressure, at the way my family had seemingly conspired against me. And beneath it all, a deep, aching guilt. Guilt for even hesitating, for not immediately agreeing to save my cousin's life, no matter the cost. "Jasper," Ilara's voice broke through my internal turmoil, softer this time, laced with a hint of impatience. "Please, say something." I swallowed, my throat dry. "Ilara, I understand you're in a difficult situation, and I will get tested, of course. But to ask me to sell my car, that's a huge ask. That's my savings, my independence. I worked for years for that car. And I'm asking you to help me live for years, Jasper," she countered, her voice gaining a sharp edge. "What's more important, a material possession or a life?" Her words were a weapon, expertly wielded. How could I argue against that? How could I prioritize a car over a life? But it wasn't just a car. It was a symbol. It was mine. "We wouldn't ask if there were any other way, son," Gareth said, his voice heavy with a desperate plea. "We've tried everything. We're at the end of our rope." "And we'll help you get back on your feet, Jasper," Vivian added, her voice thick with tears. "We'll find a way to pay you back eventually." Eventually felt like a hollow promise. The cost of lifelong medication and post-operative care was astronomical. They had already exhausted their savings. How would they ever pay me back? I looked at my parents again. Arthur finally met my gaze, his eyes filled with a profound sadness but also a silent plea. "Jasper, we're family. We take care of each other. This is what we do." Beatrice, still holding my hand, squeezed it again, her eyes begging me to say yes. The pressure was immense, suffocating. I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of their expectations, their desperation. I need to think about it," I finally managed, my voice barely a whisper. "I need some time." A collective sigh of disappointment rippled through the room. Ilara's face fell, her eyes losing some of their desperate hope. "Of course, dear," Beatrice said, her voice soft but with an underlying tone of disappointment. "Take all the time you need. But please, Jasper, think about what's truly important." I nodded, unable to meet anyone's gaze. I stood up, feeling a sudden, overwhelming need to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the cabin. "I'm going for a walk," I announced, my voice a little louder than intended. "I need some air." No one tried to stop me. As I walked out the door, the cold night air hit me like a physical blow, a welcome shock against my flushed face. The inky blackness of the mountains, usually so comforting, now felt oppressive, mirroring the darkness in my soul. I walked aimlessly, the crunch of fallen leaves under my boots the only sound in the vast silence. My mind was a chaotic storm of thoughts and emotions. How could they ask this of me? How could they put me in such an impossible position? And how could I possibly say no? Ilara's life. My car. The stark contrast was brutal. On one hand, a human life, my cousin's life, hanging in the balance. On the other, a material possession, albeit one that represented years of hard work and a significant step towards my future. The logical part of my brain screamed that a life was infinitely more valuable than a car, but the emotional part, the part that felt betrayed and used, rebelled against the unfairness of it all. I walked for what felt like hours, the cold seeping into my bones but doing little to numb the turmoil in my mind. I thought about Ilara, about our shared childhood, our easy camaraderie. I thought about her passion for environmental law, her dreams, her vibrant energy. The thought of her fading, of her life being cut short, was unbearable. But then I thought about my car, the countless hours I had worked, the sacrifices I had made, the feeling of pride when I drove it off the lot. It wasn't just metal and plastic. It was a tangible representation of my journey, my independence. To give that up, to essentially start over financially, felt like a profound setback, a derailment of my carefully planned future. I returned to the cabin long after everyone else had gone to bed. The living room was dark, save for the dying embers in the fireplace. I crept to my room, the silence of the house amplifying my internal conflict. Sleep was impossible. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the impossible dilemma replaying in my mind. The next morning the cabin was subdued. The usual morning chatter was replaced by a quiet, almost reverent silence. Everyone walked on eggshells, their gazes darting towards me, filled with a mixture of apprehension and unspoken expectation. Ilara looked pale, her eyes shadowed, but there was a flicker of desperate hope when our eyes met. I avoided eye contact, focusing on my breakfast, the food tasting like ash in my mouth. I knew I couldn't put this off any longer. I had to give them an answer. After breakfast, as Arthur and Gareth were discussing the day's plans for a short fishing trip, Beatrice approached me, her voice soft. "Jasper, dear, have you had a chance to think?" I took a deep breath. "Yes, Mom, I have." She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "And?" I looked at Ilara, who was sitting across the room, pretending to read a book, but I knew she was listening, every fiber of her being attuned to my response. "I'll do it," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "I'll get tested. And if I'm a match, I'll sell the car." A collective gasp, then a wave of relief swept through the room. Beatrice let out a choked sob and pulled me into a tight hug, her tears wetting my shoulder. "Oh, Jasper, thank you, my brave boy." Ilara rushed towards me, her face alight with a fragile, desperate joy. She threw her arms around me, hugging me tightly. "Jasper, thank you. You're saving my life. I'll never forget this, never." I hugged her back, but the embrace felt hollow, tainted by the resentment simmering beneath the surface. I had agreed, yes, but the joy I should have felt, the satisfaction of doing something truly selfless, was overshadowed by a profound sense of loss and resentment. If you're feeling the weight of Jasper's decision, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us tell these complex human stories. The next few weeks were a blur of medical appointments, blood tests, tissue typing, psychological evaluations, a dizzying array of procedures designed to ensure I was a suitable donor, both physically and mentally. The doctors were thorough, explaining the risks, the recovery process, the potential complications. Each explanation, each consent form, was a stark reminder of the gravity of my decision. Ilara was with me for most of the appointments, her presence a constant reminder of what was at stake. She was effusive in her gratitude, constantly thanking me, promising to repay me, to make it up to me, but her words felt hollow, a desperate attempt to assuage her own guilt or perhaps to ensure I wouldn't change my mind. "I know this is a lot, Jazz," she said one afternoon, as we sat in a sterile waiting room, waiting for my results. "And I hate asking you for this, but you're the only one, you're my only hope." I looked at her, her face pale, her eyes shadowed with fatigue. The reality of her illness was undeniable. She was fading, slowly but surely, and I was her last chance. The guilt, the profound sense of responsibility, was a heavy burden. "I know, Ilara," I said, my voice soft. "I'm doing it for you." The results came back a week later. I was a perfect match. The news was met with a mixture of relief and renewed apprehension. The surgery was scheduled for a month later, giving us time to prepare. The next step was selling the car. It was a painful process. I listed it online, took calls from interested buyers, and endured the inevitable haggling. Each interaction felt like a piece of my future being chipped away. The money, a substantial sum, was immediately transferred to a special medical fund set up for Ilara's post-operative care and lifelong medication. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, swallowed by the insatiable maw of the healthcare system. I felt a profound sense of emptiness. My new car, the symbol of my independence, was gone, replaced by a feeling of being adrift, of having lost a part of myself. I bought a cheap used sedan, a practical but uninspiring replacement, a stark reminder of the sacrifice I had made. The day of the surgery arrived, a cold, grey morning. The hospital was a sterile, impersonal place, filled with the hushed whispers of worried families and the distant beeps of medical equipment. My entire family was there: Arthur, Beatrice, Gareth, Vivian, their faces etched with anxiety and hope. I remember the pre-op room, the nurses prepping me, the anesthesiologist explaining the procedure. I remember the cold, sterile air, the bright lights, and the overwhelming sense of dread. But beneath the fear there was a quiet resolve. I was doing this for Ilara. I was doing this for my family. "You're so brave, Jasper," Beatrice whispered, holding my hand, her eyes filled with tears. "My brave, selfless boy." Arthur, usually so stoic, put a hand on my shoulder, his grip firm. "We're proud of you, son. Incredibly proud." Ilara was wheeled in on a gurney, looking frail and vulnerable. She reached out for my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Thank you, Jas," she whispered, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Thank you for everything." I nodded, unable to speak. The moment was too heavy, too charged with emotion. The surgery itself was a blur. I remember waking up in a recovery room, a dull ache in my side, a profound sense of exhaustion washing over me. The first few days were difficult, filled with pain and discomfort. But I recovered, slowly but surely, supported by my family. Ilara's recovery was more complex. The transplant was successful, but her body had to adjust to the new organ, and the lifelong regimen of immunosuppressants began. She was weak, but alive, and with each passing day she grew stronger, her vibrant energy slowly returning. The family was overjoyed. The cabin trip, the impossible request, the sacrifice, it all seemed to fade into the background, overshadowed by the miracle of Ilara's recovery. She was given a second chance at life, and I was the one who had given it to her. But for me, the experience left a lasting mark. The physical scar on my side was a constant reminder of the surgery, but the emotional scars ran deeper. I had saved Ilara's life, yes, but I had also lost something in the process. My independence, my financial security, and a piece of my trust in my family. The gratitude from my family was immense, overwhelming at times. They treated me like a hero, constantly praising my selflessness, my bravery. But beneath the praise, I felt a quiet resentment. They had asked me to sacrifice so much, and while they were grateful, the burden of that sacrifice was mine alone to bear. Ilara, once recovered, threw herself back into her studies, her passion for environmental law renewed with a fierce intensity. She was alive, vibrant, and determined to make the most of her second chance. She often spoke of repaying me, of finding a way to make up for my sacrifice, but the reality of her ongoing medical expenses, the constant need for expensive medication, meant that any repayment was a distant, almost impossible dream. If you're finding this story as emotionally resonant as I am, please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more compelling narratives like this to life. Life slowly returned to a new normal. The family gatherings resumed, filled with laughter and shared meals. But for me, there was always a subtle undercurrent, a silent secret that hung in the air. The knowledge of what had been asked, what had been given, and what had been lost. I finished my degree, found a good job, and slowly began to rebuild my financial stability. But the memory of that cabin trip, of Ilara's request, and of the impossible choice I had to make, never truly faded. It became a part of me, a quiet reminder of the complexities of family, loyalty, and the profound sacrifices we sometimes make for the people we love. And to this day, whenever the family gathers, whenever Ilara's vibrant laughter fills the room, I look at her healthy and alive, and I feel a strange mix of pride, love, and a lingering, unspoken resentment. The secret of that trip, of the car, and of the impossible request remains a silent testament to the hidden depths of our family's story, a story that still haunts every gathering, a story that changed me forever. The weeks and months following the surgery were a strange, disorienting blur. My physical recovery was steady if slow. The incision on my side healed, leaving a jagged pink scar, a permanent, tangible reminder of the day I gave a piece of myself away. But the emotional recovery was far more complex, a labyrinth of conflicting feelings that I struggled to navigate alone. Ilara, on the other hand, blossomed. With each passing day, her color returned, her energy surged, and the spark in her hazel eyes, once dimmed by illness, now burned brighter than ever. She was a testament to the miracle of modern medicine and, as everyone constantly reminded me, to my selfless act. The family's relief was palpable, a collective sigh of gratitude that enveloped Ilara and, by extension, me. I was the hero, the savior, the one who had given her a second chance at life. And yet, beneath the surface of their effusive praise, a quiet resentment simmered within me. It wasn't that I regretted saving Ilara. The thought of her fading, of her vibrant life being cut short, was still unbearable. But the other cost weighed heavily on my soul. My new car, the symbol of my hard-won independence, was gone. The substantial sum it had fetched was a mere drop in the ocean of Ilara's ongoing medical expenses, swallowed by the insatiable maw of the healthcare system. I was back to driving a beat-up, used sedan, a practical but uninspiring replacement that served as a constant, stark reminder of my sacrifice. My financial situation was a mess. The money I had meticulously saved for a down payment on an apartment, for future investments, for a sense of security, it was all gone. I was starting from scratch, burdened by the knowledge that my cousin's lifelong medication and post-operative care would continue to drain resources. Resources that, in part, had come from me. The family and their overwhelming gratitude seemed oblivious to my internal struggle. They saw only the miracle, the triumph of life over illness. "Jasper, you're a true angel," Beatrice would often say, her eyes welling up with tears, pulling me into a tight hug. "We don't know what we would have done without you." Arthur, usually more reserved, would clap me on the back, his grip firm. "You did good, son. You did a truly noble thing." Ilara, too, was relentlessly grateful. "Jas, I owe you everything," she'd say, her eyes shining. "I'll never be able to repay you." She meant it, I knew. Her words were sincere, but with each utterance, the weight of her gratitude and the unspoken debt grew heavier. It felt like a constant reminder of what I had given up, and what I was still giving up. I tried to articulate my feelings once to my best friend, Liam. We were grabbing a beer after a particularly grueling day at my new entry-level graphic design job. "It's just everyone keeps calling me a hero," I confessed, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. "And I know I did a good thing. But I also feel empty, like I lost something important and no one really sees that." Liam, always pragmatic, listened patiently. "Dude, you saved your cousin's life. That's huge. The car, the money. It sucks, I get it. But it's not your life." "No, it's not my life," I agreed, "but it was my future, my independence. Now I'm back to square one financially. And I feel like I can't even complain about it, because, it's just a car. Ilara's life was at stake." I mimicked Ilara's words, the bitterness evident in my voice. Liam sighed. It's a tough spot, man. You're caught between a rock and a hard place. You did the right thing, but it came at a personal cost. And it's okay to acknowledge that cost. His words were a small comfort, a validation of my feelings, but they didn't alleviate the burden. I still felt isolated in my experience, unable to fully share the depth of my resentment without sounding selfish or ungrateful. The family gatherings, once a source of comfort and joy, now carried a subtle undercurrent of tension for me. Every time Ilara spoke of her renewed vigor, her plans for the future, her passion for environmental law, I felt a pang of pride, yes, but also a pang of loss. Her future was bright, in part because I had dimmed my own. One evening, a few months after the surgery, we were all gathered at my parents' house for a casual dinner. Ilara was animated, recounting a recent victory in a pro bono case she was working on. "It was incredible, Uncle Arthur," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling. "We actually made a difference. We stopped that corporation from polluting the river. It felt so good, so meaningful." Arthur beamed, his chest swelling with pride. "That's my girl, always fighting the good fight." Beatrice nodded, her eyes shining. "You're doing such important work, Ilara. You're truly making the world a better place." Everyone at the table was praising her, celebrating her achievements, and I was happy for her, truly. But as I listened, a familiar knot tightened in my stomach. I was still struggling to make ends meet, still driving my beat-up sedan, still trying to rebuild the financial foundation I had sacrificed. My own career felt stagnant, overshadowed by the weight of my personal circumstances. Ilara caught my eye across the table, her smile softening. "And none of it would be possible without Jasper," she said, her voice filled with genuine emotion. "He gave me this second chance. He's my hero." The words, meant to be a compliment, felt like a spotlight exposing my internal conflict. I forced a smile, a hollow mask over my true feelings. "Just glad you're doing well, Ilara," I mumbled, looking down at my plate. Later that evening, as I was helping Beatrice clear the table, she noticed my subdued mood. "Jasper, dear, is everything all right? You seem a little quiet tonight." I hesitated, then decided to try subtly to express a fraction of what I was feeling. It's a lot, Mom. Seeing Ilara so vibrant, so full of life, pursuing her dreams, it's wonderful. But it also makes me think about my own path and how much I had to put on hold." Beatrice paused, a dish towel in her hand. She looked at me, her eyes filled with concern. "Oh, Jasper, I know it was a huge sacrifice and we are all so grateful. But you're young, you'll rebuild, you'll get there." Her words, though well-intentioned, felt dismissive. "It's not just about rebuilding, Mom," I said, my voice low. "It's about the feeling of having to start over, of losing that sense of independence I had worked so hard for. It's a different kind of burden." She sighed, her gaze softening. "I understand, sweetie. I truly do. But Ilara needed you, and you stepped up. That's what family does. We help each other, no matter the cost." "No matter the cost," I repeated silently, the phrase echoing in my mind. It was a noble sentiment, but the cost in this case had been disproportionately borne by me, and it felt like no one truly understood the weight of that. If you're feeling Jasper's struggle, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us tell these complex human stories. The unspoken secret of the car, of the impossible request, became a silent wedge between me and the rest of the family. They celebrated Ilara's life and my role in saving it, but they seemed to conveniently forget the specific, tangible sacrifice I had made. It was easier for them to focus on the heroic act rather than the uncomfortable details of its execution. I found myself withdrawing slightly, creating a subtle emotional distance. I still attended family gatherings, still participated in conversations, but a part of me remained guarded, a quiet observer rather than a full participant. I learned to smile and nod, to accept the praise while a quiet storm raged within. Ilara, in her renewed zest for life, sometimes seemed oblivious to my struggles. She would talk excitedly about her future plans, her upcoming trips, her aspirations, all of which required a certain level of financial freedom that I no longer possessed. "Oh, Jas, I'm thinking of taking a trip to Costa Rica next year," she announced one day during a casual lunch. "There's an amazing environmental conference there and I really want to go. It's going to be expensive, but it's so important for my career." I forced a smile. "That sounds great, Ilara. I hope you have a good time." "You should come," she said, her eyes bright. "It would be amazing. We could explore the rainforests, see all the incredible wildlife." I chuckled, a hollow sound. "I don't think that's in the cards for me right now, Ilara. I'm still trying to pay off my student loans and save up for a new car that isn't about to fall apart." Her smile faltered slightly. "Oh, right. I'm sorry, Jas. I forgot." She looked genuinely contrite, but the moment passed quickly, and she soon returned to her excited plans. It wasn't her fault, I knew. She was alive and she was making the most of it. But her forgetfulness, her casual disregard for the financial reality of my situation, stung. It was a constant reminder that while I had given her a future, my own future had been significantly altered, and she, and the rest of the family, seemed to take it for granted. The psychological toll was immense. I found myself questioning my choices, replaying that night in the cabin, wondering if there had been another way. Could I have said no? Could I have found a different solution? The answer, always, was no. Her life was at stake, but the lingering doubt, the quiet what if, was a constant companion. I threw myself into my work, finding solace in the structured demands of graphic design. It was a way to rebuild, to regain a sense of control over my life. I took on extra freelance projects, working late into the nights, slowly, painstakingly, putting my financial pieces back together. It was a lonely process, one that further isolated me from the easy camaraderie of my family. The seasons turned, another year passed. Ilara continued to thrive, her career flourishing, her life a testament to the power of second chances, and I continued to rebuild, slowly, steadily, but with a quiet bitterness that never fully dissipated. The scar on my side was a constant reminder, a silent witness to the profound sacrifice I had made. The family continued to gather, to celebrate, to share stories. But for me, the laughter often felt hollow, the warmth tinged with a chill. The secret of that trip, of the car, and of the impossible request, remained a silent testament to the hidden depths of our family's story, a story that still haunted every gathering, a story that had changed me forever. I was a hero, yes, but a hero burdened by a secret, a hero who had paid a price no one else truly understood. The journey was far from over. The emotional landscape of my life had been irrevocably altered, and I was still learning to live with the new terrain. Years passed, each one a slow, deliberate stitch in the tapestry of my life. The physical scar on my side, once a vivid pink, faded to a thin, silvery line, a subtle whisper of the past. But the emotional scars, though less visible, remained, a complex network beneath the surface of my everyday existence. The resentment, once a burning ember, had settled into a dull ache, a chronic condition of the soul that flared up unexpectedly, usually during family gatherings or when I saw Ilara's name in the news. I was now 28, 4 years older than the young man who had walked out of that cabin, his future irrevocably altered. I had rebuilt, slowly and painstakingly. My graphic design career had taken off, fueled by a relentless drive to regain what I had lost. I had saved enough for a down payment on a small apartment, a modest but significant achievement that felt like a personal triumph. And I finally owned a new car again, a sleek, reliable model that, while not the same as the one I'd sacrificed, represented a hard-won reclamation of my independence. Ilara, too, had soared. Her career in environmental law was flourishing. She had secured a prestigious position at a national non-profit, her name appearing in articles and on local news segments, a passionate advocate for the causes she believed in. She was a force of nature, vibrant and articulate, a living testament to the second chance I had given her. She was everything I had hoped she would be, and more. And that, paradoxically, was part of the problem. Her success, while genuinely gratifying on one level, also served as a constant, glaring reminder of my own delayed progress. While she was traveling the world for conferences, speaking at rallies and making a tangible difference, I was still grinding, still working to catch up, still haunted by the ghost of a future I had willingly, yet resentfully, relinquished. The family dynamic had settled into a new, unspoken equilibrium. I was still the hero, the selfless one, but the effusive praise had softened into a quiet, almost reverent respect. They celebrated Ilara's achievements with unbridled joy, and they acknowledged my contribution to her life with a solemn gratitude. But the specific details of my sacrifice, the car, the financial setback, the emotional toll, remained largely unaddressed, a silent agreement to focus on the positive outcome. Arthur and Beatrice, my parents, continued to be loving and supportive, but the conversation about my feelings, about the lingering resentment, never truly happened. They seemed content to see me thriving, to believe that my recovery, both physical and financial, meant that the emotional wounds had also healed. "You've done so well, Jasper," Beatrice would say, her eyes full of pride. "Look at you now, with your own place, your successful career. We always knew you'd bounce back." "You're a resilient one, son," Arthur would add, a rare smile gracing his lips. "Strong, just like your grandfather." Their words were meant to be encouraging, but they often felt like a subtle dismissal of the internal battle I still fought. It was as if my outward success negated the inner cost, making it impossible for me to voice the quiet ache that still resided within me. Ilara, too, continued to express her gratitude, but it had evolved. It was no longer the desperate, pleading thanks of a dying woman, nor the effusive promises of a newly saved one. It was a deeper, more mature appreciation, often expressed in quiet moments. "I saw that article about your new project, Jas," she said one afternoon, during a rare one-on-one lunch. "It was brilliant. Your work is really impactful." "Thanks, Ilara," I replied, genuinely pleased by her compliment. "It's been a long road." She nodded, her hazel eyes meeting mine, a flicker of understanding passing between us. "I know, and I know it wasn't easy. What you did for me, it wasn't just the kidney, was it? It was everything else." Her words for the first time felt like a true acknowledgement, a recognition of the broader impact of my sacrifice. It wasn't a full confession, not an apology for the request, but it was a step, a subtle bridge across the chasm that had grown between us. "No, it wasn't just the kidney," I admitted, my voice low. "It was a lot. It changed things." She reached across the table, her hand briefly covering mine. "I'm sorry, Jasper, I truly am. I wish there had been another way. I wish I could have spared you that." Her sincerity, her quiet empathy, disarmed me. The resentment for a moment softened. It didn't vanish, but it transformed, becoming something less sharp, less bitter. It became a part of our shared history, a complex thread woven into the fabric of our relationship. If you're finding this story as emotionally resonant as I am, please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more compelling narratives like this to life. The turning point for me wasn't a grand revelation or a dramatic confrontation. It was a gradual shift, a slow acceptance that began with Ilara's quiet acknowledgement. It was realizing that while my family might never fully grasp the depth of my personal cost, Ilara at least was beginning to see it. And that was enough. I started to redefine my relationship with my sacrifice. It wasn't just a burden anymore. It was also a testament to my own strength, my own capacity for love and resilience. I had faced an impossible choice, and I had chosen life. And in doing so, I had discovered a depth within myself I hadn't known existed. The annual cabin trip continued, a steadfast tradition. 4 years after that fateful conversation, we gathered again, the autumn leaves still painting the mountains in fiery hues. The cabin, with its familiar scent of wood smoke and old books, felt less like a place of past trauma and more like a place of enduring connection. This time the atmosphere was different. There was still laughter, still storytelling, but there was also a quiet maturity, a deeper understanding that permeated our interactions. Ilara, now a seasoned professional, spoke of her work with a quiet passion, her eyes alight with purpose. Gareth and Vivian, though still carrying the weight of Ilara's ongoing medical expenses, seemed more at peace, their gratitude for her life a constant, gentle hum. One evening, as the fire crackled in the hearth, and the adults were engaged in a discussion about local politics, Ilara and I found ourselves on the porch, wrapped in blankets watching the stars emerge in the inky blackness. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. "Remember that night, Jas?" Ilara asked softly, her voice barely a whisper. "The night I asked you for everything." I nodded, a faint smile playing on my lips. "How could I forget?" She sighed, a long, drawn-out sound. "I was so scared, so desperate. I didn't think about what I was asking of you. Not really. Not the full weight of it." She turned to me, her hazel eyes reflecting the distant starlight. "I was selfish, Jasper. I was so focused on my own survival, I didn't see yours." Her honesty, raw and unvarnished, was a balm to my soul. It was the apology I hadn't known I needed, the validation of my unspoken pain. "It's okay, Ilara," I said, my voice gentle. You were fighting for your life. Anyone would have been desperate. But not everyone would have given what you gave, she countered, her voice thick with emotion. Not everyone would have sacrificed their future for mine. You did, Jasper, and I will never, ever take that for granted. Every breath I take, every victory I achieve, every moment of joy, it's because of you. She reached out, taking my hand, her grip firm and warm. I know I can't truly repay you, not for the car, not for the years you lost financially, but I promise you, Jasper, I will always be here for you. Whatever you need, whenever you need it. My life is your debt and I will honor it. Her words this time felt different. They weren't hollow promises or desperate pleas. They were a solemn vow, a heartfelt commitment, and in that moment, under the vast star-studded sky, a profound shift occurred within me. The resentment, the bitterness, the feeling of being a victim, it all began to recede, replaced by a quiet sense of peace, a deep, abiding love for my cousin, and a renewed sense of purpose. I squeezed her hand. You don't owe me anything, Alara. Just live your life. Make it count. That's all I ever wanted. She smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that reached her eyes. I will, Jazz. I promise. The conversation didn't erase the past or the lingering scars, but it healed something fundamental within me. It allowed me to finally let go of the burden, to accept the complex reality of our shared history, and to move forward, not as a hero burdened by sacrifice, but as a man who had made a difficult choice and had found strength and understanding in its aftermath. The next morning, as the sun rose, painting the mountains in soft hues of pink and gold, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. The cabin, once a place of profound moral quandary, now felt like a place of healing, of reconciliation. The family, still imperfect, still navigating their own complexities, felt like a true unit again, bound not just by blood, but by shared experience, by sacrifice, and by a newfound unspoken understanding. I still carried the memory of that trip, of Ilara's impossible request and of the car I had given up, but it no longer haunted me. It was a part of my story, a chapter that had shaped me, taught me invaluable lessons about life, love, and the true meaning of family. I had lost a car, yes, and years of financial progress, but I had gained something far more precious, a deeper understanding of myself, a stronger bond with my cousin, and the quiet peace that comes from knowing you did the right thing, even when it was the hardest thing to do. The secret of that trip would always be a part of our family's story, but now it was a secret we carried with a shared understanding, a quiet testament to the enduring power of love and sacrifice. And that concludes our story. If you were as moved by Jasper's journey of sacrifice and reconciliation as I was, please give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more compelling and realistic stories like this one. Your support means the world and helps us create more content you'll love. Thank you for watching.